right, 10th grade, we have the Yearling, and we've got chapters 21 through 24. Okay, so I'm going to start with, obviously, 21. And it's the aftermath of the flood. So Penny and them are literally just trying to salvage any of their crops that they can. Um, they're trying to save potatoes if they can be dug up. It talks about sugarcane being flattened. Their cowpea hay, it says, was ruined, and the only peas they got were the ones that they did during the flood. All of it's gone. And it says 2 weeks after the big rain and the waters receded, it says it still stinks of death, like it says the smell of death lay everywhere. And so for Penny, he knows something's up, something's not right, because it shouldn't smell like that anymore. So they're talking about, they're kind of watching Flag eating, and you'll notice it mentions Flag periodically, and it focuses in on the fact that he's getting older and older and bolder with the things that he does. Okay. So as they're sitting there working outside, it says old Julia started barking and tore off into the bushes. Okay. So as they're traveling, okay, this is when she does that, because they had gone down to the marsh to get some hay. It's wild hay, but remember, their hay got ruined. So when Julia and Rip tear off, they eventually find this wildcat, and it's dying. It's not fighting back, and eventually Penny figures out that there's something not right with the creature. Okay, because at first Penny thinks it's old, it's dying of old age, but Jody, and you can see he's picking up on stuff his father teaches him, that his teeth wasn't worn down like an older animal's teeth would be. So as they're traveling, the dogs bark again, and it says there was this huge buck just lying there, and it didn't even move. And Penny's like, this buck is sick too. And so he kills it, and they figure out that a plague's hit the wild creatures. And you'll notice it's not the creatures of the air, not the birds, and it's not the creatures from the water like the gators. It's all the land creatures. And Penny says it's the black tongue plague, and that it's killing all the land animals like deer or cats or bears or things like that. And so at this point, Penny can't, the only thing he can think of is that it's from the water, the tainted water where all the creatures were dead. That's the only thing he can think of. So the Baxter family decide to feed their animals from their trough. And remember, in the hole that they have where they get their water. And of course, Jody's freaking out because is Flag gonna get it? And he has all these questions. And Penny gets to the point where he's like, you've got to stop asking me all these questions. I don't know. Reiterating the fact that nothing like this has ever happened before. And for Penny, he wants to go and see, what's happening elsewhere. So he goes and talks to the foresters, and they've seen the exact same thing. Okay. So that's 21, and 22 starts off, it's November. They figured out about the plague, what to expect as far as the animals having it. And because so many animals have died, food is low out in the forest and in the area around Baxter's Island. So you have Penny decide to move their pigs, because it says their pigs or hogs usually kind of roam around, and then they always come back at night. So he decides to build a pen for them. And it says that a few days later, around midnight, the dogs are barking, and it says their fattest pig was missing, and it had been killed, and they find out it's a bear. And then in the daylight, they figure out it was old Slewfoot. Back again. You'll notice Slewfoot's kind of here and there. You almost kind of forget he's in the book, and then all of a sudden he steps back in. So with the amount of food being low out in the forest, in the scrub, he's kind of coming in where he knows he can find some. So they're going to go and hunt him down the next day, but Penny gets sick. He's got fever, and so they can't go and hunt him right after. So this, it talks about trying to trap the bear, but this bear's too smart for that. So because of food being short and the Baxter's dependence on the meat from the pigs, they decide to kill them early and then just keep a few so they can basically breed them next year and have more meat. So it talks about, as far as meat, the Baxters are pretty good so far. And even Penny in here says they've made out way better than he anticipated that they would, that their corn is still going to make. And it talks about Jody having to grind the corn down to make cornmeal. They use that for everything. And it goes through here and talks about because Jody says he does all his figuring when he's grinding the corn, which just means he thinks. And Penny's like, well, you're going to have to do a lot of it, because it kind of lets you know that they were hoping to sell a little bit, and with the extra money, he was going to go to school with Fodder Wing, bring in a teacher, and they split the money. And of course, that's not going to work. So he has to do a little homeschooling, if you will, and Penny has to teach him. So in this chapter, it brings up Flag again, and that Flag, he's getting bolder and he's getting more nosy as far as getting into stuff. So it says that one night they had some sweet potatoes out there and they were curing them. They had a huge pile on the back porch. And you'll notice um, in the chapters, they eat this all of the time. So at first, Flag just butts it and he likes the noise. I mean, think about any animal when it's playing with something, can get its attention. And then he flattens one and he kind of tastes it. And then he basically destroys their rations, and they probably will not have enough to make it through the year. And this is the first time Jody sees Penny get truly angry. Okay. And he says, even Penny upheld Ma Baxter in the gravity of the matter. Um, and so you'll notice throughout this situation, the rations of food, it's more important than ever. And it comes above. And this is what Penny's trying to teach Jody in the situation, and in more than one situation, that getting rations comes above everything else. Because if you don't have food, you won't survive out there. Okay. So Penny tells him he has to make a pen, and that doesn't work very well because he doesn't put a top on it. And if you've ever seen a deer, you know they can jump. So Penny says he's got to have a top on it, and he promises to help him out. But it says Flag's literally just getting into everything, trying to lick the meat that they have, butting over lard that they have in cans. And that's how chapter 22 ends, is with Penny saying, it'll do you no harm to learn to be careful. You've got to learn taking care of rations comes first of all, first after getting them. So when you live where they do, getting food and making sure you have enough food is everything. So chapter 23, it's the end of November. It's starting to get cold outside. And it talks about how Jody's growing and getting older. And they kind of make the joke that eventually she might have to get Penny's pants for him because he's getting so big. And um, as far as their food, it says that they're feeling pretty good. They feel like they can breathe now. Sugar cane and stuff like that kind of made a comeback. And with the corn and everything and the pigs, they feel like they'll do all right. So as they're sitting there that night, it says the dogs take off after something, and they hear, remember, they've got the cow and then they've got the little calf. And it says they hear the calf scream and bleat, and you have the pack of wolves, a huge pack of wolves. It says 3 dozen or more, and they get the calf and they kill it, and the dogs try to fight them off, and Penny shoots a couple, and Julia kills one. But at this point, this is a big deal. Okay, that many wolves, they can come in and take over anything if they want to. And for Penny, he knows this is a big, like, this is huge. Okay. And he even says he was worried about it. I mean, they only have 2 dogs and 2 guns. There's no way they can take on that whole group. And that's what he's nervous about. And so he takes care of the dogs, all the wounds that they have, and he knows he has to have help. So he goes to the foresters. And so the next day when he goes, of course, Jody, all he's worried about is, are they going to get my fawn? Are they going to get Flag? That's what he that's all he seems to worry about. With the plague, is Flag going to get it? Is Flag going to get it? Are they going to kill Flag? What am I going to do with Flag? Etc. Etc. So, as far as the wolves, when he tries to work with the foresters, um, their foresters, their plan is not necessarily what Penny wants to do. I mean, in fact, he says, no, I'm not going to do it. So the foresters want to poison them, and there's no way for him. Penny's not going to do it at all. He's not. And of course, um, Jody, through their discussion, because as far as Ma Baxter, like for her, it's like we need to save our animals. We need to save what we have. Let's just do what we have to do. And for Penny's like, I'm not doing it. It's not natural. A wolf coming in and killing a creature, that's natural. And they got to eat. But a poison, no, I'm not doing it. And so for Jody, as he's sitting there listening to him, he thinks, he kind of agrees with this with Ma Baxter, like we got to get rid of the wolves. And the only reason he thinks that is because he wants to protect Flag. But he also thinks his ma's not being fair with arguing. So they have this little argument, and of course, Penny's not going to do it. And eventually, the foresters come and talk to Penny and tell him where the poison is. And the poison kills most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And one night, as let's see, Penny and then Ma are talking, it says that Jody overhears a conversation and they talk about Oliver. And it says Oliver's gone to Jacksonville. And then it says taking a boat from Jacksonville to Boston. And he's basically he's kind of like he's going to stay there a little while before he gets shipped off. And it says he gave Twink Weatherby money, and she's gone off to Jacksonville and gotten on a boat and gone to Boston with him. And it says Lim is hot. He's angry. Okay. And basically Lim kind of wants to follow them too. And he says, if he meets Twink and Oliver, he'll kill them both. And for Jody, as he listens to this, at this point, he's done. How in the world could Oliver go back to Twink after all that's happened? He doesn't get it. So he says, I'm done with Oliver. I'm done with this. He's not my friend anymore. After everything that's happened, I'm done. So, chapter 24, it goes back to the wolves. It talks about that a lot of them have been killed with the poison, but there's still about a dozen or so left. So, they're still attacking animals, so they know they have to take care of the wolves. So they decide the poison's not going to work because the wolves that are left, they're not touching it. And on top of that, the foresters lost a couple of their dogs because of it. So as far as the rest of the wolves, they're going to hunt them down. Okay. So Penny's going to come. He takes his dogs, and then he vouches for Jody, and Jody can come, which of course means he's got to tie up Flag, and they leave Ma. So Ma gets them all taken care of, gets them food, and they're going on their hunt to take down the wolves. Okay, so they head towards the water, and once they get to the watering hole, they get there and they see a lot of different creatures. Okay, there's tons of young bears, and it says there's a good dozen of them. They see 2 bigger bears, they see a buck, and they basically decide to wait until they see the wolves. So it says the wolves come in single file, and where they are, they don't have a shot. So Penny vouches for Jody. Jody can ride around and push them towards them, and then they can take out the wolves. And so, of course, Jody jumps on Caesar. He's nervous. He gets around, and it works beautifully. Okay. So at this point, um, you have the bigger bears run away, the buck's gone, but you still have a huge chunk of the young bears still there. So they decide to catch them alive and then go and sell them. And eventually they decide to sell them in Jacksonville. So, um, as they're going through there, they figure out who's going to go and sell them. And Penny doesn't really want to go, so just foresters are going. So you have Bucks going, um, and then Lim is going. And of course, you can kind of have an idea why Lim wants to go because they're going to sell it in Jacksonville, which is where Twink went to go and head off to meet Oliver. So once they decide to go to Jacksonville, they decide who's going. Um, Penny basically looks at Buck and says, "You know, I'm trusting you to get my share." And of course, it's already been proven to you that Buck is trustworthy. Okay, so through all of this, they kind of sit down. The Foresters leave with the bears, and Jody and Penny are left. So they sit down and they eat, and they're riding home. But before they go home, they're going to go hunt a gator. Remember, they feed that to their dogs, and they need some grease from it. And once they get the gator, they're on their way home. And then, if you remember that buck that was there, the forester that was there when they were hunting the wolves, the foresters wanted to kill that buck, and Penny said not to. And so, on their way home, they see the beautiful buck, they kill it. Um, because at this point, the plague's kind of run its course, and the animal population is starting to build back up. So they kill this beautiful buck, they take it home and dress it and all that kind of stuff, and they make their list for Jacksonville for Buck to get. Okay, so the foresters come the next day, they get the list, and they kind of talk about if there's not enough money from the bears, selling the bears to get all of this, what do they feel are necessities and what can Buck skip over? And so when they're leaving, you have Lim notice the buckskin. And if you think back to that scene, as they're leaving, Lim kind of questions him, like, would you go to go kill that buck that you let go, that you don't want us to have? And so, of course, Penny says, no, I'm going to kill the gator. And so at this point, when Lim sees it, he takes Penny and he shoves him up against the side of their smokehouse, and Buck and Bill will run in there and tear Lim off. And of course, Penny, he reiterates, "I'm not lying. It just happened to show up right in front of me, and it was just it just happened. It was just pure luck. I wasn't hunting it." And Lim kind of walks off, and you see Buck here kind of step in and apologize for Lim, and basically say, "Ever since Oliver ran off, I mean, his temper's been unbelievable, and he's been jumping at everyone and on everyone." And Buck apologizes. Um, and Penny says, "Of course, I mean, you know I'm telling the truth," and Buck believes him. And he says, "I was going to give you some of the meat too on your way back." And as far as Buck, he promises, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of him. And then don't worry about not having enough money to get everything on your list. We'll take care of it for you. Don't worry about it." And through this whole thing, as Jody's watching, he expects and feels like Penny should just beat the mess out of Lim. Like, it's not fair that he didn't have consequences and that his father didn't go after him. And of course, it talks about afterwards, Ma says that you did the right thing. Don't think any more about it. It's fine. And for Jody, he just can't understand how this works. He says he was filled with resentment at Lim and with disappointment that his father had let him go unpunished. And he was confused by his own feelings. Because remember, Jody's always looked at his father like he hung the moon, he always does the right thing. And then here he's staring at him like, how could you do that? And he starts questioning his father's actions with Lim, and it's the first time he's really kind of felt that way. And it says Lim betrayed his father, and he doesn't understand how Lim can't pay for that. He's angry, okay? But he's also torn because he saw what Buck did, and he feels like, as far as the foresters, he wants to be angry at them, but it's just Lim, and then he feels that friendliness toward Buck because of what he's done, and he's just kind of torn between the two emotions, and then being angry that his father didn't, you know, put Lim in his place. And of course, we all know it was in the right place at the right time, and Lim wasn't really mad at Penny. He's mad at something else that's happening, which is why Penny doesn't fight him. Okay? And that is the end of chapter 24.